So I'm just going to start with a question that I've gotten from a few of you lately, and so I thought I should just address this in the Q&A time because I'm sure there's other moms that have this question too, and that is the question about should I hire a doula and what is the difference between like a doula and a midwife? And if I'm going with a midwife, like whether it's a home birth or a birth center route, do I really need a doula or will the midwife be sufficient? What are some of the reasons I would want a doula? How do I go about finding one? All those kind of questions. So I think they're awesome questions and really, really important. So I'm excited to kind of talk about that a little bit more with you today. So, first of all, let me tell you a little bit of the difference between what a midwife is and a doula. A midwife is a medical caregiver and a medical professional. So her whole job during your birth is to make sure you're healthy and to make sure baby's healthy. And so she's going to be taking care of the whole medical side. So throughout labor, she's going to be taking your blood pressure, she's going to be checking baby's heart rate. She's going to be, charting, taking lots of notes on everything going on and just making sure she doesn't see any red flags that would show that there's any complication or something going on with your health or baby's health. And so that's really her focus. And depending on the midwife, a lot of them are also really nurturing and caring. And so when they have the time, they can be really great support and just encouraging you along. But the thing is, that's not their main goal, is to encourage you and make sure you're feeling comfortable and encouraged. Their main job is, to make sure you and baby are healthy. And so they do spend actually quite a bit of time charting and taking down vital stats on you and the baby. And I want to put that out there because I think some people have the picture that their midwife's going to be holding their hand like right there at their side the whole time. And that's not really reality. So that's what a midwife does. And not to say that they're not encouraging, because a lot of them really are, but they also have a different main job, and that's their first priority, which is awesome. You want someone whose like main priority is to make sure you and baby are doing okay health-wise. So a doula, on the other hand, I'm a doula, so I'm going to say we are there solely to make sure that you as a mom are feeling amazing, are feeling empowered, are feeling encouraged, feeling informed, feeling heard. We're there for you, and we don't do anything medical. We aren't even allowed to. It's out of our scope of practice. So we are just there to support you and make sure this is a really great labor experience and birth experience for you. And so we provide emotional support, we provide physical support through massage and touch and counter pressure. We provide informational support. And so if there's decisions that you're being faced with, we can kind of give you the risks and benefits, the pros and cons to those decisions, and so that you feel like you have a good amount of information to make an informed decision that you have peace about. We're an advocate for you. So especially if you're at a hospital, I think it's so, so, so important to have a doula, because we're your advocate. And so if the hospital is pushing anything on you that you don't feel comfortable with, or decisions on you that you don't want, we're there to be your advocate. And so we can't actually make a decision for you. Like you have to be your own voice as the mom, like you call the shots. So we can't speak for you and tell the nurse she doesn't want that. But what we can do is tell the nurse, oh, wow, you know what? That's actually, she was hoping to avoid that. And so can you just give us a little time and so we can talk about it and kind of reevaluate, and she can make a decision what she wants to do. So we're able to buy you that time and kind of intervene a little bit if we notice someone's about to do something that we knew you didn't want to happen at your birth. And then we give you and your partner a chance to talk about it and have the space and time to make a decision so that nothing's being forced on you. And so you feel like you really got to call the shots for your birth and had informed consent that you were able to make a good decision. So yeah, we suggest positions to try and just things to help make the labor more comfortable for you. We take really good care of you. We're there to take great care of you and to make sure you enjoy this experience. So, we make sure you're eating and drinking, and make sure your partner is eating and drinking. We keep you guys hydrated and well fed. We encourage your partner, and which I think is really important, that Husbands love having a doula there because it's not all on them. That can be a lot of pressure on the husband to feel like, okay, I got to remember everything from the birth class. I'm her sole support, and I got to remember how to do the counter pressure and everything. And it can feel like a lot to him and a bit overwhelming, especially when he just wants to be present to the birth of his baby, and present to you, but not feeling pressure. And so as a doula, we can give him lots of suggestions like, why don't you try this for her? Why don't you try pushing on her back right here? Or why don't you try massaging her here? Or why don't you offer her some water? And so that way you still feel like you're super involved in the whole process, but you don't have to think of everything on your own or know exactly what your wife needs at any moment, because the doula is there to kind of give you some suggestions. And the doula is there to help relieve the husband, so that he can take some breaks, which is also huge. So we did not have a doula at my first birth. And wow, for so many reasons, I wish we did. And after that birth, I thought I never want to do a birth again without a doula. But one of the reasons it was so hard with that one is that I was so dependent on my husband, and he was amazing. But, he'd say, "Hun, I'm going to just step out for a second to send a text, to update our friends and family how labor was going." And I was just like, "No, you're not leaving. Like, you're not leaving my side. I cannot do a contraction without you." And so he was like, "Okay, I'm staying." And then he'd be like, "Babe, I got to go to the bathroom." And I just was like, "No, you can't leave me. Like, you're not going to the bathroom right now." And I just remember feeling terrified if he leaves to do anything, to go grab a sandwich or anything, like, I'm not going to be able to cope. Like, I can't do this without him. He's coaching me through each contraction. And what he was doing was just reading me scripture. And it was amazing to have him read that. But even having a friend read it who hadn't been there through the labor, it just wasn't the same. Like, because he had been there through the whole labor and knew exactly what I was needing, I just needed him. And so that was tough on him. And so that can be a great thing that a doula provides. So if your husband needs a break to go to the bathroom, run and get some food or something, because the doula's been there as your support person through the whole thing, she's ready to jump right in, and you don't feel like you missed a beat. You don't feel abandoned at all. Like, you just feel like you got it. You got this. And that's how I felt in my second birth. So I did have a doula for that birth. And oh man, it was like night and day difference. My husband was like, "All right, I'm going to go send a text and update." And I'm like, "Yeah, go enjoy, get something to eat if you want," just because my doula was right there next to me. And so I was like, "We got this." Like, she knows exactly what's feeling good to me. And it was awesome. And so I think for him, it was a much more relaxing birth to not feel that pressure. Like, oh man, like I can't be off for a second, this whole labor, because Kiera needs me like that. So, yes. So if you can't tell from kind of explaining what a doula does, I highly, highly, highly recommend having a doula. It's be a very rare circumstance that I would think, well, you might not need one. And maybe you won't, not to say you can't have an awesome birth without one, because you absolutely can. And Jesus and Holy Spirit and God are the best doulas and labor coaches ever. And you are going to have them no matter what. And so that's going to be awesome. And at the same time, I just think a doula makes such a difference at a birth that it's so worth it. And the cool thing is that actually a lot of insurances are starting to cover doulas now. And so I would check into it and ask your insurance, or at least they're covering part of the doula. And I just heard that Medi-Cal is going to start covering doulas too, which is awesome. So yeah, I just highly, highly recommend it for so many reasons. We didn't get a doula with my first birth, partly because I didn't really know what a doula was. And so I was a little confused why I would need one. And I thought, well, we're going to be delivering at the birth center with midwives, that I love and trust, and they're going to be there for me. And there was 2 midwives that would be there. And I thought 2 is plenty. Like the 2 midwives and my husband and Jesus, that's a great birth team for me. I don't need anyone else there. And yet, because complications came up and I had to go get induced at the hospital, the midwives weren't able to come to the hospital with me. One midwife, one of them was able to arrive at the very end when I was pushing, which was awesome. So she was able to kind of coach me through pushing and was there when he was born. But that was like the last hour of my labor. And the whole time up before that, they weren't able to come to the hospital. And so, that was super hard for me to process. And I was so disappointed that, my birth plan had gone out the window and now I was going to a hospital, and that felt scary to me. And I was just emotionally having a really hard time with this change of plans, and was crying all the way to the hospital. And I realized in hindsight, oh man, if I had had a doula, like she so could have walked me through that better and helped me process the change of plans better so that by the time I got to the hospital, I could have been in a really good place. But my husband didn't really know how to help process that with me. He's great, but he's a guy, and he wasn't the one giving birth and didn't have all these amazing dreams about the birth like I did. And he was so excited because he was like, well, we're still getting to meet our baby today. So he was stoked. And so I don't think he really knew how to help me process the grief I was having over my birth not going the way I'd really dreamt of it going. But a doula can really help do that. And I know she would have been able to walk me through that much better. And I think I would have enjoyed the whole birth experience and that whole day a lot more if I'd had a doula. And a doula, the great thing about her is she's with you. She's at your side no matter what. However the birth goes, she's there with you. So if you have to transfer to the hospital, she's right there with you. She's there with you the whole time. And usually a doula will show up to your house whenever you need her in labor. And so whenever you start feeling like, okay, I think we could use a little extra support, she comes and she just walks that whole journey with you. And it's really awesome because then she can be there to help you decide when it might be a good time to drive to the hospital, to drive to the birth center, to call your midwife to come. It's just nice to have that expert and that extra support there so that all the decisions aren't on you and you feel like you can bounce stuff off of her and ask her thoughts, or is this normal? And she can assure you this is totally normal. I see this all the time in births. She just provides that reassurance. And she's just really good because we're trained. Like, she's just really good at making you feel super comfortable in your birth. Like, she knows the exact pressure points that are going to feel really good and the exact places that counter pressure is going to feel really good. And, she's going to know the right suggestions of when it might be a good time to try a bath, or what position might be good to try, or, when to try going on a walk. Like, she's just, she studied all of this stuff. We have a lot of training as doulas. So it's just nice to have that expert walking the whole thing with you, and you can bounce questions off of her, and it's just really reassuring. And what else was I going to say about doulas? The statistics about doulas are amazing. What a difference they make at births. If you have a doula, I don't know if this is still accurate. It used to be that those with doulas had a 40% less chance of having a C-section, which is amazing. And that's just because, for so many reasons, she can help you get in the right positions to move baby down well. She can help you labor at home comfortably longer so that you don't get to the hospital too early and get put on a time clock where they're like, okay, you've been in labor this long here, we're going to do a C-section. She's just able to offer so much to help prevent the birth going down that road. People with doulas have a 30% less chance of needing any type of pain meds if they're at the hospital. One of the really cool stats about doulas is that moms who have doulas have a much higher satisfaction rate of being moms later on, which I think is fascinating. They did studies of moms who had doulas versus moms who didn't, like 8 weeks postpartum and 3 months postpartum. And they found through their surveys that those who had doulas were just enjoying being moms of newborns more. And there's, different ideas of why that is. Some of it's because it's true that a good birth experience really does affect your journey of motherhood. And if you had a good birth experience, you tend to enjoy those first few weeks more. If you had a traumatic birth experience, that can be hard to process those next few weeks, or medically it can be, the recovery is harder. And so you're dealing with that those next few weeks. If it's a calm birth with a doula and you felt peaceful through the whole thing, the babies often tend to be more peaceful. And so it's just interesting. Like, moms who had doulas reported that their babies cried a lot less than moms who didn't have doulas. And they don't really know if it's true that those babies actually cry less throughout the next few weeks, or it's just the mom's perception that the crying doesn't seem as much as moms who didn't have doulas. But either way, they definitely report less crying. So it's just, I think it's fascinating. I think some of it is having that motherly figure at your birth, it's a female, and she's there encouraging you and supporting you and loving on you. And there's something about just that kind of motherly love during the birth that empowers you as a mom a little bit differently afterwards, is a theory out there. So anyways, I could go on and on. I'm not going to, but I'm just going to say doulas rock, and I loved my birth having a doula, and I would never want to do it without one, because she just helped make it so heavenly and wonderful and put me at such peace and put my husband at such peace. And I was just so well attended to, and he could just sit and hold me, and then she was attending to everything else, getting me sips of water or whatever I needed, or a cool washcloth. And so I think they're awesome, and I totally recommend it. I think it's absolutely worth the investment. If you're looking for one, you can ask your midwife. You can check at birth centers. They usually have, even if you're not giving birth at a birth center, they usually have a lot of cards of doulas at the birth centers, or they have ones they recommend. So you can check those out. Oftentimes hospitals or doctors have cards for doulas too. You can Google, doula. If you want a Christian one, Google Christian doulas. And even if you are finding other doulas that aren't Christians, but you really want a Christian one, just ask them. Usually doulas in a city are really connected. And so, like, I know the doulas in my city, and I know which ones are believers and which aren't. And people are used to that because they're used to moms wanting a specific type of doula, whether it's she wants a doula who knows hypnobirth, or she wants a doula who's a Christian. And so we all get that as doulas, that moms have their preferences. And so you can probably ask any doula in your city, say, I'm a Christian, I really like a doula who's a Christian, so she's okay if there's worship on, or she can pray with me, and they'll get it, and they might have some good recommendations for you. So yeah, so that's my spiel about doulas and why they're awesome. And yes, okay.